Hi, and welcome to Quarantine Cocktails with Chad and Nicole.
Today we'll be talking about the Lion's Tail, which is a more obscure classic cocktail from the Prohibition era. It combines bourbon, lime juice, simple syrup, allspice liqueur, and Angostura bitters. So the drink's first documented appearance comes in 1937's Café Royal cocktail book published in London. The story is that the Lion's Tail inventor was a Prohibition-era bartender from the United States who moved to Britain. The idiom of twisting the lion's tail means provoking the British, which alluded to the resurgence of American Anglophobia during the period of between World War I and World War II, which contributed to the US's late entrance into World War II. So the name of the drink may also refer to the fact that the drink contains some unexpected twists with its ingredients. With allspice dram hailing from Jamaica and lime, you might expect this drink to use rum, while bourbon is more typically paired with lemon.
And in fact, there was a fairly popular cocktail in the early 1900s known as the winter cocktail, which consisted of rum, lime, allspice dram, sugar, Angostura bitters, and ginger liqueur. So the Lion's Tail could be seen as a twist on the winter cocktail, where the bourbon has been substituted in place of the rum and the ginger liqueur has faded away. The winter cocktail itself may even be considered an adaptation of the daiquiri, transforming it from a summery, refreshing drink into more of a spicy, cold weather drink. One of the key ingredients here obviously is the allspice dram, which is also known as pimento dram. Allspice is the dried, unripe, berry-like fruit of the pimento tree. Note that this is not to be confused with the pimento or pimiento pepper, which originates in Spain and Portugal and is found in cocktail olives.
So allspice gets its name because it's said to combine the flavors of cinnamon, nutmeg, and clove. So allspice dram is produced by soaking the allspice berries in a rum base and then sweetened. It became popular in the United States and in Europe at some point in the 1800s. In the mid-20th century, it found its place as a staple in tiki bar cocktails, again paired with rum. And at some point in the 1980s, however, commercial production of allspice dram largely ceased. It was reintroduced into the US market in the late 2000s again, which perhaps not coincidentally lines up with the appearance of the Lion's Tail in Ted Hayes' 2009 book Vintage Spirits and Forgotten Cocktails, which is credited to reintroducing the Lion's Tail to American drinkers.
So we're familiar with the other ingredients in the cocktail: bourbon, lime juice, always fresh squeezed, 2-to-1 simple syrup. But we wanted to touch on a secret ingredient that many mixologists include in virtually every drink containing citrus or egg white: saline solution.
As we discussed when we made the margarita a couple of weeks ago, salt can help reduce bitterness and allow the sweet and tart flavors to really come to the forefront of the drink. Scientists believe that sodium ions actually block the palate's ability to sense bitterness. With egg whites, salt also further serves to structure the proteins and bring out the flavor. Indeed, some bartenders encourage the use of saline with almost every drink.
So we mixed up some saline by combining 5 grams of salt with 20 milliliters of water, and we put it in this dropper. You don't need to use too much, just a couple drops each drink, and you shouldn't be able to taste the salt at all. So finally, let's talk about our special ingredient that we've added for our upscaled craft cocktail, which we've dubbed the Aslan's Tail. And that secret ingredient is cocktail foam. Now, this does require a little bit of equipment. You need to use an ISI whipper, which is used for making whipped cream or culinary foam, or in this case, cocktail foam. So I first got introduced to cocktail foam after trying the Cannon cocktail at Cannon Bar here in Seattle, which I believe was our third date. Nicole took me to Cannon, and I had the Cannon cocktail. It's a delicious cocktail, kind of in the Manhattan arena with rye, ramazzotti, and sweet vermouth. But the secret is to sit a nice thick layer of triple sec foam on top of it. And I fell in love with this drink and became obsessed with reproducing the cocktail foam. I watched YouTube videos of Jamie Boudreau, the owner of Canon, demonstrating how to make it, tracked down tried to bug the bartenders for the secrets of how to make the foam. But it actually turns out that making cocktail foam is relatively easy. Once you have the ISI whipper and a few other ingredients, you can put it together in like 15 minutes. So we're actually going to demonstrate it right now. The longest step is, so one of the other sort of rare ingredients is to get sheet gelatin. You can order this on Amazon or elsewhere. But you can see that the gelatin comes in this kind of sheet form. And you take the gelatin and cut up a single sheet and you bloom it. So when you take you cut up the gelatin into small strips and then just cover it lightly with cold water. That starts to bring out the gelatin, and it starts to really gelatinize. So that's the first step for the cocktail foam. The other ingredients are pretty straightforward. So you start with 1 sheet of cocktail foam. You have 3 ounces of hot or even warm water. We'll get into that a little bit. And then some amount of your base liqueur, here 4 ounces of the St. Elizabeth allspice dram. And then we go with 2 ounces of freshly squeezed lime juice and 4 ounces of egg whites. This is our bloom gelatin. We'll take that and squeeze the remainder, the extra water out, and I'll just do it over the sink here. So you just have a bit of gelatinized goo there. We've already placed the other ingredients, the egg whites, the lime juice, and the liqueur over here in this Pyrex container. And then what we'll do is we'll just take 3 ounces of water and we'll pop it in the microwave for like 15 seconds.
And we don't want it too warm because with the presence of egg whites in the foam, we don't want it to cook the egg whites.
Right.
We just want it to be warm enough.
Right. So you can use warm water that will just dissolve this and then allow it to cool to the point where it won't cook the egg whites. Or if you get it to just the right temperature, you don't have to wait too long. All right. So that's good. We've got our hot to warm water. We'll mix it in with the sheet gelatin, and you can see
starts to
that
dissolve.
it dissolves. Stir it a little bit more to get it fully dissolved. All right. And then we will combine all of that together with the rest of our ingredients. It's not too hot, so I think it'll be fine. The eggs won't cook. So there we've got all of our foam ingredients.
Do you want to put a couple drops of...
Yeah, why not? We will add, since we're working with egg whites and saline, egg whites and citrus, we'll also drop in 3 or 4 drops of the saline solution in there. And then we will pour that into our ISI whipper canister. Alrighty. So now we have our foam components in there.
Mm-hmm.
We will seal the canister and we will charge it twice. So we will use these little charges of nitrous, which can be used for whipped cream manufacture, or you may find other creative uses for it, but we'll be using it for our cocktail foam. You can also use CO2. It gives a different texture, a lighter, more effervescent texture, which sometimes I like to use for foams that we're pairing with like a sparkling wine. But for this one, I like it to be rich and thick, so we'll go with the nitrous. Yeah, once you charge it, so we'll charge it with the nitrous. And you can hear the nitrous being forced in. You turn it upside down and shake it 3 to 5 times to get it going. Yeah, that was just a little bit of extra water. Okay, now you want to remove it fairly quickly because it's pressurized in there. And then we'll take a second charge. And get that in there.
Yep.
All right.
Shake that again.
Give it another shake.
And it's just to incorporate the elements, right? It's
Yeah,
not
just to like give it a, you know, the charging will actually also help mix, but that just helps it fully incorporate, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have our cocktail foam. Now, you can go right away with the cocktail foam, and you can see here that, you know, we've already got a pretty nice, rich foam.
Mm-hmm.
But I recommend,
texture. Nice.
I do recommend setting it in the fridge for, you know, 4 hours before you're going to use it if you have a chance to prepare it ahead of time. So I
just set this whole thing in the fridge, right?
Yep, just set the whole whipper, keep it in the fridge, pull it out when you're ready to use it. Refrigerate it between uses. It keeps, you know, I keep it for up to a week at a time. Although generally, like, I prepare a cocktail foam when I know I'm going to have a bunch of people over. I go over to someone's house and take a cocktail foam over in one of these whippers. Luckily, I have 2 whippers, so we already have a refrigerated batch.
Ready to go.
Yep. I'll put this one in the fridge for later use.
And here's the ingredients list one more time.
Yes, this should say allspice dram. I typo, but there you go.
It's okay. All right.
All right. So, also as a final bonus feature, we decided to garnish today with sugar-soaked lime chips. And these lime chips, we'll have directions in the comments about how to make them. But I will give a little bit of advice, which is to freeze the limes ahead of time and then get a very nice sharp knife and slice very thin. It allows you to slice very thin and very even lime chips, a little bit easier if you freeze the lime ahead of time.
Here's
and then
a
you
couple
dip
of
them
them
in
just to
simple
see.
syrup and put them in a dehydrator or dehydrate them in your oven at its lowest setting for a long period of time. And that's how you make these delicious, slightly sweet, slightly sour, slightly bitter lime chips. I like them. They're a little more fun than just a standard lime wheel. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we now turn our attention to the lion's tail. So here is the classic lion's tail recipe with the ingredients that we've discussed. You can optionally use egg white if you want to make foam at home. You can use egg white, in which case I recommend using the dry reverse shake technique that we talked about in one of our early episodes when we did the ultraviolet gin sour. But of course, I will be presenting this craft version, the Aslan's tail, where we will be using a nice bourbon, Evan Williams single barrel, which is quite delicious to be drunk on its own as well as mixing. And then, so here's the Evan Williams. Mm-hmm. So 2 ounces of bourbon per drink. And then the essential element here of the allspice dram. Now this is St. Elizabeth's allspice dram. There's a few others on the market, but this is the one I like to find. Pretty readily available at this time. And obviously we have our fresh squeezed lime juice, which Nicole will be preparing. Mm-hmm. And we use a little bit of simple syrup, the Angostura bitters, and of course, our secret ingredient, the drops of saline.
Mm-hmm. That's it right there.
Mm-hmm. So I'll start pouring our ingredients here.
You're doing 2 ounces?
I'm doing 2 ounces or 4 ounces for the two of us since we're each gonna have one.
Okay.
We need an ounce of that.
Okay, that's half of this, right?
Correct.
So I'm fresh squeezing the lime juice and then I'm gonna strain it.
Yeah. Oh, and I should mention that when we put the lime juice in the cocktail foam, we strained that a little bit. We wanted some pulp, but we don't want too large chunks because that can actually interfere with the free flow of the cocktail foam. So make sure you don't get really large pieces of pulp into the cocktail foam. But the pulp is nice. It is actually useful to have when you're making a regular shaken cocktail because it contains some of the emulsifying agents that really kind of thicken that cocktail and interact with the egg whites if you're using egg whites, but also just provide the texture for the overall. I put in the St. Elizabeth's dram. We've got our lime juice. I'm going to put in my 2 dashes of Angostura bitters, which, as we talked about last week, you want to make sure you're not skimping. And really 2 dashes should be like a 1/4 teaspoon. So I've got a 1/4 teaspoon measure. I put that in there. And then we've got our friend, the 2-to-1 simple syrup. And we're going to put in a 1/2 teaspoon per drink. So a full teaspoon here. Boom.
That's good.
All right. So now we have all our ingredients. Except, of course, for our ice. And if you want to pull our glasses out too, you can do that. Ah, thank you. I almost forgot the secret ingredient. What would I do without you, my dear? All right, so I'm going to put in 4 drops of this to make our 2 drinks. And then we're going to do our shaking. As you might recall, because we're using ice straight out of the freezer, like you probably will at home, we have to shake longer. So we have to shake for a good 35 to 45 seconds to both bring the temperature to the right place, but more importantly, to get the amount of dilution that's recommended for these drinks. So we will shake for a good 40 seconds here.
Show you the shape of these glasses while he's shaking.
Got our chilled gin sour glasses, which is great for making sure that you have enough room for the foam on top. So that's why we're using those rather than our smaller Nick and Nora glasses that otherwise this cocktail would probably fit in. But with the gin sour glass, plenty of room for that wonderful foam, which is really the key bit. All right, that's about 45 seconds there.
Okay, and will you double strain?
We will double strain because we use the lime juice in here. So we're going to strain out of our shaker and strain any bits of ice and the citrus. Try to keep as much of that out.
Mm-hmm. Looks good.
All right. All right, we got plenty of pulp in there because it's taken a while to strain.
Mm-hmm.
But I will get it all in the strainer so that we're not diluting even further.
Mm-hmm.
It looks pretty much like we got to about the optimal amount. Maybe just a little more for this guy over here.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You can see it's a nice sort of
So,
honey color.
yeah, clearly it's gotten cloudy. That's from the aeration provided by the shaking.
Mm-hmm.
And then we put on the foam. So apply the foam. I like to kind of aim at the side of the glass so that it doesn't just blast right into the cocktail. And then try to get a nice You can see how nice and thick that is. It's really just kind of gelled up.
And you like to do kind of a one layer, or is it really up to the foam artist?
It's up to the foam artist. I'm going to fill this up like this. And then to make for nice presentation, I'm actually just going to,
Level it off. Maybe?
I'm going to level it off with a knife. So I'm just going to take the foam off the top. And so it's nice and level and presentable. I don't know.
It's a great idea. And then we take our lime chips.
Put our lime chips. Oh, well. Gotta watch what I'm doing with my sloppy leveling though.
You're doing great.
And then put the lime chips on the side.
Could you also do a little shaving of nutmeg on top of the
Potentially,
foam?
although
A little festive?
yeah. There's already a lot of allspice flavor, but that might be a nice little touch as well. And we'll see how that is. But here you can see nice rich foam, delicious, looks good with the dried lime chip. And we'll see how it tastes. It is a beautiful color.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers, all.
That's nice. Very good.
Delicious. All right. Enjoy your lion's tail, and we'll see you next week.